Have you ever watched Doom Patrol? If not, you should. It's an amazing show, and it needs to be saved. Well, yes, it's not one of those action-packed superhero shows, but that's how it's unique. It's about character growth. There's amazing characters, either main characters or supporting. Characters like Rita, Larry, Cliff, Jane, Dorothy, Cyborg, or the Chief, along with great supporting characters like Mr. Nobody, Roni, and the entire Sisterhood of Dada, especially Fog. It's a crazy show full of insane plots that why it's just so great. It just goes for it. It doesn't hold any of its punches. There's, these little bug beings called the scants, a magic blue horse head, and a giant eye in the sky killing people. And the reason why they're so great is because they take these silly comic book storylines and take it seriously, but not edgy. Not edgy like 90s edge. Instead, they just take the source material seriously, but they don't edgify it, which, in my opinion, is something that adaptations need to do more of, because I get kind of annoyed when a lot of times things are edgified. Like, jokester villains are turned into these big bad things, when the reality is they're just meant to be fun. They're not meant to be this whole edgy thing. It's just meant to be fun, and that's what Doom Patrol is. It genuinely is the concept of fun superhero show. It is fun, but it's serious. And I promise everyone can relate to at least one of the characters. When it comes to deep dives of the character's mental health, I think this show is personally probably the best show that ever does any sort of deep dive into character mental health, mental illness, etc. And when it comes down to it, I think every single person genuinely can relate to at least one of the characters. I personally can relate to Jane, as I too had some childhood trauma, and I would say it made me not necessarily weird. Well, okay, yes, it did, but it's not necessarily. It made me very different than everybody else, and that's what happened to Jane. So I feel like I could genuinely relate to her, the character. And I promise, like I said, everyone can relate to at least one character on the show, if not many. In my opinion, this show is probably DC's best TV show for the past, ever, actually. Well, live-action show, just like Unlimited, Batman Beyond, Batman the Anime Series, those were all great as well, because those were cartoons, and they were just amazing as well. Those were artworks. But Doom Patrol, I think, is genuinely up there, and it's live-action, too. That's just what makes it just so. It's just great. But unfortunately, due to DC's constant cancellations of TV shows as recently, Doom Patrol is kinda being rumored to be canceled soon. Which, in my opinion, and I think a lot of people who watch the show's opinion, that is a huge mistake. Because this show is probably the best thing DC has going. And they hardly ever market it, and they just let it sit there. In my opinion, I think Doom Patrol just needs to be watched by everybody. It's one of those superhero shows that's just perfect. It's one of those shows genuinely that I think are perfect. There's not many. I personally am a very picky person when it comes down to comic books, adaptations, and everything, and I can't think of a single thing in Doom Patrol I dislike. In fact, I think this show, and I would say The Boys, are probably the only things that I think there's not a single flaw in them. Fully, I think this show is just a 10 out of 10. Maybe even better than that, maybe an 11 out of 10. So, if you're not convinced, but at least just go watch the first episode. I promise you, Doom Patrol is worth it. And it needs to be saved. Thanks for watching.